Hello, everyone. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live. There's the music. Hey, I'm not sure if that's
There we go.
yeah. That somebody got excited about that, Joy. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the book is going to be a hit. That's what it means.
Okay, so hello, everyone. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live session on GenAI at Work, your question answered. I'm Talila, Millman, a technology and business transformation expert.
And I'm Joy Mserve. I'm a leadership development expert and organizational change leader. Together, Talila and I are here to discuss the critical steps for defining a successful AI strategy and managing the people-related challenges. And of course, we want to hear from you today as well.
But before we dive into the questions, let's start with the thought-provoking statistics. Now, did you know that 79% of executives believe AI will fundamentally change their industry within the next 5 years? And yet, 60% are still struggling to define a clear strategy.
That is a staggering number. And what it really highlights, what I'm getting is it really highlights that urgency, right, for leaders to understand and embrace the potential of AI. And I really believe it's critical for companies right now to create cultures where innovation is top of mind. So this is an era that we're in right now where adapting to the new tools that are available, like AI, it's really critical because organizations, they don't want to be the ones that are left behind, right? And so I think of Xerox, for example. They could have led with the digital camera in 1984, but they stuck with film and they stuck with it year after year. Somebody in their organization kept bringing up digital cameras and they went, no, no, no. They were very stubborn about it. And then they went out of business, right? They were just too stubborn on adapting.
Yes, I'm actually thinking about Kodak when you say a film versus camera.
I'm sorry, Kodak. I've said Xerox. That's my Gen X brain. They're getting like stuck right next to each other.
That's okay. And you're absolutely right. If you think about it, you have Kodak on one hand that were like the biggest industry in the industry and went bankrupt. And on the other hand, you have Fujifilm that were like a second, but then they thrived and they succeeded because their CEO, their management structure, they realized what was happening and they looked to expand to new areas. And so they're here and they're still successful in the $1 billion company, whereas Kodak is gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, let's start with one of the biggest challenges leaders are facing, which is how to create a Gen AI vision and identify the key focus area for successful integration. When executives are trying to figure out what AI to invest in, how should they go about it?
Well, I believe the first step is to really understand the specific pain points and opportunities within the organization. So as leaders, it really starts with us listening closely and deeply to the employees' obstacles, their concerns. What are they frustrated by? Where are the bottlenecks in the system? And leaders need to work with their teams to assess which tasks or functions could most benefit from Gen AI integration. What do you think, Talila?
Absolutely. You begin by examining your existing business model alongside a SWOT analysis. SWOT is, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then assess how AI, particularly generative AI, will impact each aspect of your business. So you think about strengths. SWOT is, strength. Can generative AI, is that from you, Joy?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, not a problem. I think I can still hear myself, but that's kind of weird. Okay, so we talked about, you start with a SWOT analysis. Then you think, can you amplify strength? Can generative AI enhance your existing strength? Can it address your weaknesses? Can it mitigate them? Solve big challenges? What major challenges is your organization facing that AI could solve? And what challenges did you put aside because you thought they were too costly to tackle. With recent technological advancement, are these challenges now more feasible? And then, of course, you also have to think about the competitive landscape. Has the adoption of generative AI by competitors given them a significant advantage? And if so, could new entrants empowered by AI disrupt your market? What are the unique strengths within your organization that AI cannot easily replicate? You have to think about the competitive landscape. You think about your weaknesses, your strengths, and then by the end of this evaluation, you should identify your organization's top 3 to 5 priorities. And I want to illustrate with an example from a bank that I've been talking with about their AI strategy. So, you won't believe it, but unfortunately, many banks and government entities still operate on mainframes. And they rely on outdated programming language like PL1 and COBOL. And if you don't know what that is, this is okay because, exactly.
Please explain.
COBOL and PL1, these are like archaic languages. When I went to college, I didn't even learn them because they were so old. And I went to college over 20 years ago, right? And this archaic system really hindered the bank's ability to add new features and also lead to glitches and issues with customer accounts. And here's where AI can be game changers. There are new tools from leading cloud providers like AWS, Google, and Azure that offer, and others, by the way, not just from them, that offer innovative solutions to modernize these systems. There are tools for code conversion. The AI can convert COBOL code into modern languages, making the systems easier to maintain and update. And there are a lot of tools there, like AWS Code Guru. There is AI Code Whisperer. There are other tools. There are many of them. I'm not going to list all of them. And then for cloud migrations, moving these systems to the cloud, this enhances scalability and flexibility. And there are a lot of tools for that as well. And I would say some of these tools rely on traditional AI, and some on GenAI, and both really, but what GenAI did is that it significantly boosted popularity of AI tools. So if before, even if some of these tools existed before, banks and conservative institutions in general were weary of using AI, now they're adopting it, and it makes a huge difference. A difference now. So this is one priority, just to move the old systems to a new infrastructure, new code base, and so forth.
And this works for organizations beyond banks, right?
Yeah, of course. There are a lot of government organizations, by the way, that also work on mainframe. And I want to. You're not from New Jersey, right? You're from California. No, you're from. Where are you from, Joy?
Los Angeles. Yeah, Los Angeles.
Yeah, California. So you would know there was a big story during the pandemic, during COVID, about the New Jersey social security system and unemployment benefits. They were on mainframe. And because there was such a need for unemployment benefits, it collapsed. And they had nobody to maintain it because it was in an old mainframe. And the governor of New Jersey came out to the press and asked people, is there any volunteers? And so this is really something that if you're an organization that still has something on mainframe, this has to be dealt with like immediately, right?
Yeah. What is coming to mind is our Kodak example, right? Is that mainframe is almost like the film, right? For the cameras, is like you have to somehow separate yourself. Technology is moving. You've got to get on board. So let's tackle it. And you've got to put the resources and the people on that area in your company if you're still operating that way. Like that is a top priority. Go now, get there. You've got to get that foundationally first. Is that right, Talila?
Yes, absolutely. So, with the bank example, I talked about mainframe, but there are other things as well. You mentioned infrastructure. So consider the amount of data banks hold about their customers. For example, my bank can detect that I have a new car every 3 years because we have lease. They can detect that I have mortgage with a very high interest rate. They can see the interest rate, the mortgage payment rising. And so they could have given me offers that would be in line of my needs because the data is there. The problem is that right now the data is buried within their transaction system, their old transaction system that's on this mainframe and COBOL and so forth. So one of the things that they're doing now that they're moving it to the cloud, they're also creating a data modernization effort. And this data modernization effort could unlock new features, could allow them to get to the customer data and make this offer, which would be a win-win both to the bank and to the customers. And then lastly, they can implement AI-based chatbots, right, to extend their support hours at a lower cost, providing better service to customers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's a wonderful example, Talila. I mean, you really laid out the urgency and importance, right, in the specific example. And so if that's you out there right now, if you know that's how your company is being built, then I think it's time to talk. Either you are that executive in charge and you can make that happen, or to talk to someone else. And so while I think it's important to come up with that top-down strategy for those foundations, as leaders, it's really equally important we create the right environment for employees so they can get on board, they can get creative with incorporating AI into the company, into their role, into their processes and systems. And so as on that leadership side, what I often see missing is that workplace environment where people are really ready for innovation, right? And it looks like this. What it looks like when they're ready is a place where people are feeling a sense of ownership over their work, where they're engaged in discussions all the time with their leaders, where they're managing up and it's safe to manage up, right? Where they're saying, hey, here's this issue. We want to improve this process and this system, it's broken. And also, one of the fundamental human motivators is autonomy. And so places that are ready for this kind of innovation are going to be places where people feel a sense of autonomy in the work that they're doing. And then not only that, it's where they're really meaningfully recognized for their contributions, where they feel seen, heard, and valued. And once we have that condition, then these companies are going to be able to go to the moon with their AI, right? They can do anything and incorporate in any area of the organization. They can really take this on.
I believe that creating an environment for employees to take initiatives, first of all, I agree, it's super motivating when people feel that they're doing something meaningful, when people feel that their voice is heard. It gives them like an energy boost to do more and to come up with creative ideas. I think that it also helps ease the fear and concern about AI in their organization, because a lot of people are kind of afraid that AI will take their job, and so they're kind of holding back.
That is such a wonderful point, right? Because we have to ensure that sense of psychological safety. Your job is not only going to stay here, right? It is going to get better and get easier. And that's a form of natural reinforcement. When somebody experiences, my job got so much better and easier because of AI, that is a reinforcer for them to stay and continue and do more. And so that's, I think, the lens to bring into the organization is we're not trying to replace you. We're trying to augment you. We're trying to lift you up so that you can do your highest and best work. And so what I've also seen is that AI in the workplace, it can be a big change, right? Like you're talking about this fear. And it's really making employees partners in this change is really crucial. Making them collaborators, bringing them in, pulling them in, being very transparent along the way. So I want to say this, Talila. Of course, I read your book, right?
you.
I did, from cover to cover, the Triumph framework. It's called, there it is, 7 Steps to Leading Organizational Transformation. And of course, I specifically like the chapter where you included my story. That's probably my favorite chapter. But no, in your book, I'm just kidding. You really make employee involvement a huge key in this framework. And so I thank you for that. I thank you for highlighting the employee and really calling that to the attention of leaders here.
So first of all, Joy, I want to tell you that your story was so amazing. It was one of the best stories because it shows resilience. So to anybody who didn't read the book yet, I'm telling about how Joy kind of figure out from the beginning of the pandemic, she understood the impact, the huge impact it will have on her business. And she took steps to minimize and mitigate and expand the business in other directions. So where other business in this industry kind of closed and didn't do that well, her business thrived and ended up being acquired for a big sum of money. So I thought that was an amazing story. Good to see you, Joy.
Thank you.
So getting back to change management. So my book is really about change management. How and your story fit into it because it was how important it is for leaders to identify trends. And again, AI is one of the biggest trends of our time, and I think everybody identifies it. I think the really difficulty is how do we manage this change? And Triumph, I provide a framework for driving change, and it is made of 7 steps, each one of them crucial for a successful transformation. The first step is identifying the root of the challenge, which we already discussed, right? It's AI, and we talked about defining strategy and so forth. 3 steps involve ideating a plan, putting it into action, and refining it as you progress.
Yeah, and that execution phase, isn't that the most challenging? Right? It's that everybody's like, okay, I can. It's maybe easier to get people there, but once you're executing, what are those additional pitfalls that you find in this area?
So every change is hard, and
yes.
Executing change is hard, but there are specific pitfalls that have to do with deploying AI in the organization that are very specific to AI deployment. So for instance, how do you ensure that your data is clean and that it's good? Data privacy and security is a big concern to many people. Data fairness, how to make sure that you don't that your data doesn't create biases, hallucinations, and many more. But these execution steps require gaining support and overcoming resistance, which is a crucial element when it comes to AI. And there is often significant fear, like we talk right now, that AI will lead to job losses. And so I have 3 steps in Triumph that deal with that. And they're about creating alliances with stakeholders, identifying transformation champions at all levels, and crafting a detailed communication plan. But I really want to get this question back to you, Joy. As a people and leadership expert, what is your advice about the human aspect of integrating AI? How can we ensure user adoption and overcome resistance to change within the organization?
Yeah, I mean, exactly like you said, in any organization, change is hard. And here's the thing, is that humans, we are naturally resistant to change, right? That's just built into our DNA, right? Yes. And so when we go through change, it's actually a very similar cycle to grief.
Oh, yes.
And people may experience shock and surprise. And that comes especially when the leaders operate from that old school style of command and control, right? And it's like, what's happening to us, right? When they haven't been pulled and brought with buy-in along the way. We also may experience sadness, right? Even depression as we mourn, the good old days, right? Yeah. We mourn the way we used to do things. We mourn, that things are changing and there's just that natural resistance and pull to keep things the way they were. And so there's some very real feelings that people experience. And it's interesting makes it harder for leaders. We experience them at different paces and different speeds. And so everyone will eventually move into acceptance, or they'll leave the organization, right? But they'll eventually move into acceptance and fine-tuning and a sense of normalcy. But as leaders, we need to help orchestrate pulling them through it. And we're not immune to it either. But if you've done a good job, right? If you've done a good job at pulling them into the process, collaborating with them along the way, and asking them what they see as the biggest opportunities for incorporating AI into their role or into the processes and systems, you've got their buy-in. You're going to avoid a lot of those early stages of the process of change to a large degree, the grief and the sadness and the reflection and the, oh, woe is me, right? But here's what I want you to make sure you write this down. For your most resistant folks in the organization, here's the question to ask. What do you think is reasonable and achievable right now? And in the next 3 months, and in the next 6 months, what do you think is reasonable and achievable? Because it puts the ball back in their court, right?
I love it, Joy. I talk a lot about dealing with resistance in the Triumph framework, and pulling employees into the change process in all stages is the key element, because that's how you get the buy-in. You get the buy-in, and then you create champions within the organization.
That's right.
To drive it. You're not driving it on your own anymore. It's like you have a little army behind you.
That's right. Are you change champions? They are key. They are key to tap into, for sure. Well, I love that too. I completely agree, Talila. I'm wondering, we have a few folks in our audience right now as we speak live. And I'm wondering if there are any questions out there that we could answer. And I have it pulled up here. And so I wanted to see if anybody in the audience has any questions. You can type them as a comment in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer here. There's a bit of a delay as well, Talila, so they're just now getting this question.
I'm going to look at my other screen. The problem with StreamYard is that you don't get these things it's distributed. So if I'm looking sideways, because I'm trying to look for the
Well, while we are waiting for questions, I just want to say that I think just to plug your book one more time, if you want more resources and you want to read Talila's book, go to talilamillman.com. And then, of course, if you're interested in working with me in any way, you can go to leadingwithjoy.com. Please don't hesitate to connect with us on LinkedIn for discussions. We'd love to be a part of your journey in any way we can help.
Well, I see that we don't. Do we have?
We've got one from Pamela. She hasn't read the book yet. Do you have a script for convincing the exec team to make space for sandboxes? How would you manage up on this, Talila? How would you make the case with the executive team that we need to, create space for this, sandboxing and experimental? Because AI can happen on the side, right? It doesn't have to be, we scrap this right now. And it's really just that sandbox. I love that term, Pamela.
I think this is a great question, because you don't want to start right away with deploying something without experimenting and playing around, right? So the approach of sandboxing is a great approach. I would just go and I would pitch it. I would explain the benefits. And the other thing, one of the things that I talk about in my book, Pamela, is when you try to introduce change, and these are things that people are not used to, the best thing is to form alliances. Think who is the easiest to convince. You start with them. And then over time, you form more and more alliances until you have like a big group of people that support you, and then you go together and you pitch your stuff, and you have a lot more chance of getting your point across. Another thing, you have to think about who has the purse strings, and maybe sometimes they're the one that sometimes make the call, and you want to make them part of the process. We talk a lot about making people part of the process. Don't come up with a solution. Come up with a problem. Bring it to people that are the decision makers and discuss it with them and see what they say and what are their objections. Usually, people objections are rooted in real concerns. And one of the ways to address it is really listen. If they have something meaningful, if what they say is correct, then you go and you fix your proposal to address it. And if not, then this is a teaching moment and you explain why it doesn't make sense. But in any case, the most important thing is to have people flush their objections so you can address them one way or another.
I love that, Talila. And I think that's beautiful. And I have one example for you, Pamela. I was bringing in a sort of a new philosophy to an organization. And it really helped to have, usually you're going to outsource. You're going to go to another organization, right, who's really good with AI, or you're going to tap into a consultant like Talila, right? Make sure all of the decision makers you need are in this meeting, in this room, in the first event that happens, right? Like Talila said, the person with the purse strings, maybe your CFO, and really try to get their buy-in to be present when they hear, I guess, for lack of better words, the pitch, right? How it's going to benefit the organization, like Talila mentioned, and just get everybody in the room at the same time. They can all form their own opinions about it. You still may have some people who are more resistant to it than others, but I guarantee there'll be a couple people who are excited about the change, and then it's almost like you planted a wonderful seed that can continue to grow.
I love that, planting a seed, because it is a seed. When you have a new idea, it takes time for people to get adjusted to it. So you plant the seed and you continue to water it and talk about it and get opinions. And sometimes it takes time. You have to be patient. You cannot. I have an example in my book about how I was trying to get a development for a test system, and I had objections from my manager, from my peers, and they had valid objections, by the way. It's not that it wasn't valid, but I still thought that my way was the best way. And so we continued talking about it and mentioning it until I had a great opportunity where the existing system failed. And so I worked with the others to fix the existing system. But at the same time, I went back to my manager and to my peer and said, if we had implemented our proposal, this wouldn't have happened. And in the future, this can happen again and could fail our entire business. And at that point, the proposal was accepted. It took us almost 2 years to get it accepted. But we never gave up, and we looked for additional information all the time.
Yeah.
I think our time is up, Joy.
I think our time is up, but thank you everybody for attending and joining us today. We hope this provided some valuable insights for you. And hopefully you can incorporate more AI into your organization very soon.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Bye.
Bye-bye.